Welcome. I'm Matt Reiners, co-founder of Eversound, and with me today is Mandy Hampton, the Chief Operating Officer for the Ridge Senior Living. Today, we're going to be exploring technology and operations. In my years getting to know Mandy and the Ridge family, I can say that they're in it for the right reasons. They're a high-end boutique IL, AL, and memory care based in Colorado and Utah. Thanks for joining me today, Mandy.
Hey, Matt.
Awesome. Give us some background. So most operators in the senior living industry concur that COVID-19 only accelerated the inevitable. Adoption of technology throughout communities from resident care, clinical care, prospecting, and operations. Many providers believe that data collection technologies and those that provide access will be critical to senior living success in the future and will positively impact both the resident and the staff and the family experience. And now, Mandy, I'm curious, how is the Ridge Senior Living using technology to serve residents?
That's a lot to answer, Matt, but I'm going to do my best.
Awesome.
All right. So, I think everyone can agree if you've worked in senior living for any period of time, we're not the earliest adapters of technology. I think we're kind of, wait and see, those that are, critical systems, of course, you're going to have them in place, but we're just not the industry that's going to, be innovative, generally speaking. But COVID has certainly forced us to be creative, not only just what you're doing day to day in the building, but how you're leveraging technology since we were, kind of cut off from the outside world for almost a year. And so, the things that became very apparent up front, and thankfully for us, we had invested in some mass communication technology a few years ago. It actually came because I was being evacuated from a wildfire in California at the time. And I was getting text messages and calls from my daughter's school saying, hey, we're evacuating the school, come get your kid. And then it got to the point where you can't come get your kid. And I'm like, if something like this happened in one of our communities, how are we going to let all the family members know? You can't call 150 families. You can't email people fast enough. So we invested in that technology. And for us, it was a lifesaver because, you have to get data out to family members, especially if you're in outbreak status, sometimes daily, sometimes more than once a day, and you have different audiences. So you're able to set up those groups, whether it's a family member group, a resident group, segment the residents in, IL, AL memory support, and then the staff. So for us, getting things out timely, having, attachments with documents, just telling them what was going on in real time was an absolute critical thing for us. At the beginning of the outbreaks, year ago, we were seeing, I was seeing in the news that staff members were just abandoning communities because they didn't feel like they were being communicated honestly. Like they felt like the communities were hiding information. I'm like, well, I may not be able to control COVID. I mean, we'll do our very best, but I can control the messaging and how transparent we are with people. And we have had nothing but gratitude and thanks from all of our residents, families, and staff members about how transparent we were, even though it was hard. There were days I did not want to send those messages out, but we did, and we stuck to our guns, and I think it paid off. So that was just one thing. Obviously, other technology that once you started opening up the buildings, how are you going to have those in-person visits with the residents and the family members behind plexiglass? You can't hear each other. Right. So we did actually use the Eversound system with the lanyard so that people could actually hear what was going on. It was very difficult for some of the residents. So that was leveraged. And then we actually invested just in the last few months in this system called needlepoint bipolar ionization. Did quite a bit of research on what are we going to do long term for our communities. We don't, how long is COVID-19 going to be around? Is it going to be COVID-22? Norovirus is always an issue in buildings once or twice a year. Same thing with flu season. We wanted a technology that could help us fight, airborne pathogens. So, we looked at UV lights, we looked at foggers, we looked at all sorts of stuff, and we settled on this particular system. And they're just small machines that get installed up in the air vents. And they put out millions of ions into the air. They're harmless, and they kind of attach to any kind of bad pathogen like a magnet. And they deactivate any kind of virus. So COVID, it was like 99.4%. Norovirus, it was 99 point something percent. So we are very hopeful that having this technology in our communities is going to keep us safer. I think it's bulletproof, for the long run, long after COVID's gone.
Wow. Yeah, that's my first time hearing about that, but it's so amazing where technology has come to nowadays, and it's been amazing to see how quickly senior living communities have adopted it, and now they have things that will take things out of the air, which just kind of blows my mind. So kudos to you for being proactive and finding those solutions. I feel like I need one for those for my house.
I
Um,
got one.
And in terms of like, I know you kind of touched on the three things, and I know communication is so important, but like when you're seeing technology, like what do you think the greatest impact of that technology allows us to do?
Well, I think it just helps streamline. It helps get information out faster because this is the world we live in. I mean, the last year, everyone's just been stuck at home, glued to their, tablets or phones or streaming news. And so it's just things are happening in real time and people expect, timely communication. They're not going to wait a week for a weekly update. It's just not going to be acceptable anymore. I think one of the opportunities in our industry is taking some of our systems and creating more efficiencies within them. I did a count at one of my buildings. We have 13 different software systems running at any given time. And you are lucky to get two of them to talk to each other. So it's extremely efficient. So, for instance, someone walks in your front door and they go to the tablet and they check in. Well, someone has to input 150 residents, all the staff members, all the family members, on an ongoing basis. And we know that there's move-ins and move-outs every day. And then, once they move in, you've got to put them into a database. And once they inquire, they're in a different database. And, once you're, doing the care, they're in a different database. So it's very time consuming and inefficient for us to be having to do all that manual data entry. So I'm working with a company right now to try and take some of those key, probably start with 3. Okay. Where can we find some efficiencies and put out some KPIs that creates a dashboard, pulling in from maybe 3 or 4 different software systems. So it just gives our executive directors, our management team a quick snapshot to just have a better use of their time. I mean, our teams have never worked harder. And right now it's about being efficient and being laser focused on what we need to do to refill our communities and do it safely. So you're just trying to create, that whole mentality of work smarter, not harder.
Ooh, right. And good words to live by for sure. And I think there are opportunities even for like the vendor side to do more of those interoperabilities to really make life easier within the communities and not more difficult. So we can support some of these heroes on the front line and being able to give those snapshots rather than just, having them pull the same information from 15 different places. So
Yeah.
kudos to you for working with providers to really open up that level of communication and share what you guys need. And now with senior living, do you see technology being less effective in any situations?
I think I think so. I think sometimes you can get into information overload, like if you wanted to say, hey, look at the history of Mandy living in the community, in a year's period of time, where are you trying to get all that information? You got the nurse call system. How many times did I press the call bell? How many falls did I have? Was I sent out to the hospital? Have I had bad interactions with family members? If I had, whatever, like trying to get all of that information into one digestible form can be cumbersome. So that's why we need to find efficiencies there. But as far as, I think a lot of people are looking at robot technology right now. I think that's, for us, we might consider it if it was something that, was first of all, accepted by the residents and they understood how to use it. I do think more in-room tablets, more use of things like Alexa or, Google Assist is going to certainly be, an expectation going forward, and having that integrate with your communication system to show the calendars, show what's on the menus, to schedule appointments, to put in work orders. Yeah, that's all going to be helpful as long as the residents are adopting it.
Right.
We have a system that we put into our brand new Denver building, and it's app-based. And I would say, 75% of the residents on the independent living side are doing pretty well with it, but there's still that 25% that want like a dial tone. They want like a handheld line you plug into the wall and have that conversation, or maybe they do, handwritten notes versus an email. So right now, I think we're straddling both worlds. We'll get there probably in the next 5 years, but it's also knowing your audience as far as the family members, because they do expect things to be app-based. They say, mom's, whatever, her blinds aren't working. Well, they want an app for that. They don't want to leave a note. So you're trying to work with two different audiences. And on the staff side, you have to take into consideration how easy is it to use, because you may have some of our staff members where English isn't their first language. So it's got to be easy. They may work at multiple communities, and so the software is going to be very different going from building to building. So having something that it's easy for them to understand and that they will adopt, because the technology is only as good as somebody putting the information in. So when you look at something like that, you got to look at it from multiple lenses.
Yeah. And it's, that age old question of like, who are we designing this technology for, and like, who's going to actually use it? And, I've seen recently, right, this idea of telehealth is so important, but who's helping the resident to get on that iPad, to have that meeting, to make sure they're clicking the right link, which usually falls on a caregiver. And to your point about English, typically being another language, or just not familiar with the technology itself, then they have to do that amongst everything else that's going on within the community. So I think there's definitely almost like that human touch element, and how do we incorporate that, and really just like that human understanding of how to use technology and where the benefit of it is as well. I know my grandmother's world was changed when she learned audiobooks. You would have thought like it was like the new sliced bread. So it's just looking for more opportunities like that. And I think you kind of hit on a little bit in terms of like the interoperability between technologies, but like what other challenges do you foresee providers when they're integrating new tech into a community?
I think it's, first of all, is the software tried and true? Are you going to be the guinea pigs? I tend to not want to be the guinea pig. I actually, before I came into senior living 16 years ago, I worked for a medical software company. So I think I have a unique perspective on the shenanigans that happen behind the scene, and the things they demo you might still be in, programming world. They're not actually ready live for production. So I think trying to get through, where are they really at with their development? Are you writing into the contract, what the deliverables are, what the deadlines are, set up your paying structure so you're not paying for this thing all up front. I think all those things are critical. And then again, building it for the end user and building it in mind that, how is this thing going to scale in the next, 5 years? So if you have like a vendor that you work with, like Point Click Care, are they going to be here 5 years from now? Probably. They've been around for a long time. But if it's another company that's, probably just coming out the gate and you want to work on that, data integration, are they really going to be here long term, or are they going to sell out? Right? Like I've seen several systems that I've put into communities that have sold out to larger players, and are they going to continue to have those integrations? So it's not easy. It's a big spider web.
Yeah. And then do you have any learnings, because there's definitely people who have asked us, right? Like, what is our long-term game plan if we're going to be around a while? Because I can definitely understand, right? If you've been in this role for 20 years, you've seen companies come and go. And I guess one question that I have is, do you have any good knowledge of how to best vet some of these technology companies, or any like tried and true practices when it comes to that?
Well, I mean, I guess as far as like staying in the industry, I just flat out ask the question, like, what is your term and what's your long-term goal? And try and do the sniff test to see if, if they really, maybe they don't know, or maybe they do know what the plan is. And, if they are going to sell out to another larger, organization that intends to use that company long-term. So maybe, I'm just using Point Click Care as an example. They buy out, another organization and integrate it in. Well, that's probably a win for us. But if they're going to sell it out to someone else and then they're just going to strip the technology, then obviously I wouldn't want to invest in that. I do a lot of reference checks too. I call the communities directly that are using it and say, give me the good, bad, and the ugly. Tell me how many people are actually using this. Is it saving you time? Is it beneficial to the residents and the staff? And if they're like, no, it's just another one of the softwares the corporate rolled out that, we really don't use, I'm going to pass.
Yeah, it makes sense. And good for you to get that pulse check on communities, whether they're using things or not, because I think sometimes there's people in the home office, of course I haven't experienced this with the RIS, but some other groups where the home office has one view of things, but the community, things are done a little bit differently. And I say a little bit, meaning a lot. So it's really trying to get that pulse check of what is being successful, what is being used, and what is being helpful, right? Like we should be looking to adopt technology that's helpful and not becoming a burden.
Agreed. And another suggestion you could look at, when we've rolled out new CRM software a few years ago, or I'm looking at doing this integrative software right now, I actually bring the executive directors or those key players to the development meetings and have them sit through the demos. I actually have them look through the pricing with me, because usually those costs fall onto the communities, right? So are they finding value there in us all of a sudden adding, hundreds of dollars a month for another software product? So if you get the buy-in from the key players up front, it makes the implementation so much easier.
I agree. And that's one thing we've learned too, is just having them involved and making sure that they're at least raising their hands to wanting to receive something. It definitely helps with the implementation and the overall success, short, mid, and long term. So to final question here, Mandy, this has been awesome. If you could provide 3 takeaways from your experience that other operators can take away from the impact of technology now into the future for senior living, what would those takeaways be?
Well, I would say, as far as COVID, maybe looking back over the last year and really being honest about what worked and what didn't work. Investing. So the first thing, like I said earlier, was that mass communication, however you're doing it. Like, it needs to be efficient. It needs to be something that not only can be done at the community level, but maybe at the corporate level as well. We had a couple of outbreaks in our buildings, and they were literally just trying to survive. And I mean, I'm just being very blunt with you. They could handle one more thing on their plate. So we actually took that over with our marketing firm. We are the ones that sent out all the mass notifications to the residents and families, just to take that burden off the community. So getting that dialed down, something that's easy to do, easy to maintain, is huge. Really looking at that, needlepoint bipolar ionization, or whatever systems that you want to put into the building for the long-term health of the community. I can't tell you how many staff members have pulled me aside and residents pulled me aside and say, thank you so much for this investment. I feel safer. And it's that right now is what we are fighting as an industry, is the perception that our buildings are not safe. So doing that, I don't think it's the right thing to do anyway, but also if you're looking at it from the marketing lens or the sales lens or the, public perception lens, it's going to pay for itself tenfold over. And if it saves one life, well, then it was worth it anyway. So, or getting somebody super sick. So, looking at that, and I would say, looking at evaluating the systems that you have right now. Are they all working? Go meet with the individual communities and the department head team. Go through. Do you have 13 software systems like we do? Do you have 10? Do you have 5? Are they really working, and are they really bringing you value? And it's pretty easy to go in and just see, when was the last time people logged in? If you've got, the staff members having to put care into the tablets, they're actually documenting the care. What is the percentage of usage? And what is that usage depending on your shift? Do you have knock shift that's not using it? Is the AM shift overwhelmed? They don't have time to do it. There's 1,000 reasons why people don't use the software, and you really have to dive in deep and see if it's something that you can overcome with training, or maybe you need to scrap it and move on to something else. The good thing is there's lots of options out there.
Thank you so much, Mandy, from the Chief Operating Officer from the Ridge Senior Living. I've learned so much from this time together, and I hopefully all the people that are watching this have learned something too. So, Mandy, totally grateful to have spent this time with you, and thank you so much.
Thanks, man. It was great to see you again.